ladies and gentlemen, Gnoblars. They're sneaky, they're dirty, they're smelly, and they steal things. This particular band of Gnoblars have taken it upon themselves to raid an underground Duardin temple and steal all the Yor gold in sight, which they have stashed in their sacks. However, another notable feature of Gnoblars is that they are very cowardly. So at the first sign of any trouble, they dropped all the gold, scattered it throughout the temple in their panic to flee, and they've hidden themselves among this Dragon Fate dais and slime pool area. So that means piles of Yor gold all over the place. The Duardin patrol that caused the Gnoblars to become spooked is now on a mission to retrieve all that Yor gold and carry it home. So you can see, there they are, on that side. And of course you can see that there is a bit of daylight being cast into the cave from up there. Obviously a big natural crevice. And on this side, the Gnoblars' buddies, their masters, the Ogors, have decided, you know what, if you need a job doing, you better do it yourself. You can't trust Gnoblars to do anything. So they have dispatched forces down there to retrieve all the partially stolen Yor gold. So the way this scenario will work, each area of the table that contains Yor gold is clearly marked out on this lovely game mat with a square, and at the end of turn 5, each of these squares in the corners containing Yor gold will be worth 1 point. 2 over here as well, 1 there and 1 here, and this large central area containing more Yor gold is going to be worth 2 points. And to control it, a side must have more wounds in that area than the opposition. As far as the special terrain rules we rolled on the table for each piece, here, this archway on the ogre side is mystical, so you can either become befuddled or ensorcelled from being near that, and with Mr. Remington's record of rolling 1s, I would suggest they're going to spend most of the game befuddled if they're hanging around there. Over here, another one that he hasn't had great luck with recently. This little area of ruin here is deadly, so you don't want to be running or charging across that. This area that the Iron Drakes are inhabiting is damned, so you could choose to sacrifice some of your own troops there for a small bonus. I'm not sure the Iron Drakes are going to be doing that though. And over here, where the Gnoblars are hiding, this is very interesting. For one thing, it's mystical, so you could be befuddled or ensorcelled, and also these little Gnoblars have laid a few traps in there just to cover their tracks a little bit, so it's also deadly. So a bit of a double whammy on this piece of terrain with the Gnoblars in there, just causing a nuisance. So here we are with Remington's Renders.
Alright, Remington's Renders over here, led by the infamous Bragg the Gutsman, who has a double-handed weapon there that only he has the skill to wield. And that's got some tasty surprises in store for Andy. I'm not going to reveal them yet. And next door to him, and on this Yor gold, we have some Yetis, who've got a movement of 9, so they could be quite fast across the table. Then we have a Thunder Tusk here, with a variety of various attacks and special rules. Be interesting. Next to them we have 3 Iron Guts with a standard Maw-bearer there. And on the other side of the table we have an Ogre Hunter over there. And he has 2 Saber's Tusks with him. We're going to listen to his master's voice. And then we have some Lead Belchers. Yeah, got some Lead Belchers there. We have some Mornfang Cavalry next to those. And we have 3 Man-Eaters there. And at the start of the game I get to choose what special ability these Man-Eaters have. And I am going to choose this unit to be stubborn, which means they don't have to take battleshot tests.
Ooh. Well, it's lucky they're only Man-Eaters and not Duardin Eaters, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're pretty hungry after this long walk over the mountain, so I think Duardin flesh will do nicely.
On the Duardin side, with that beam of sunlight at their backs, first of all we have Belagar Ironhammer, of course a mainstay in my forces. Next to him we have 20 Iron Breakers, which is the largest unit of Iron Breakers I've used so far in Age of Sigmar. Let's see how that does. Next to them we have the infamous Alric Big Butts. He's becoming infamous for dying in every game, so maybe he's just got a large clan and they're all just very close relatives of his. Then up here we have 10 Iron Drakes within this piece of terrain. Then over here we have 10 Hammerers who are guarding a cannon and an organ gun with an engineer just wedged in between them to administer his benefit to both of them simultaneously. Now you may notice that both sides look incredibly even. That's because we've actually used a comp system to pick our forces that gives a point value for each unit and tells you the size of the unit as well. So I'll put a link to that below so you can see which one we used for the game. We're playing with 15 points each, and we've also got a scenario, as you can see, that is perfectly even, with both sides of the table being very, very similar, and the objectives being straight down the middle.
This is Brag the Gutsman, wielder of the great Guts Gouger. Now I've heard some fairy Gnoblars got their hands on some Dwarven Eurogold, or Duardin, or whatever you call them these days. They still taste the same. Anyway, they ran off and left this gold scattered all over these dwarf lands. So boys, come get the gold and then feast on some dwarf beards.
Lads, you'll never guess what's happened. A couple of sneaky Gnoblars have nabbed some of our gold, and now their ogre masters are coming down and trying to take it. We can't let this happen. We worked hard for this gold, lads. We won't let no stinking Gnoblars get the better of us. If you must die at the hands of an ogre, make sure he chokes to death on your beard.
He's going for the skull dice. Let's see who's going first. It's a 1 for the Duardin.
Remington!
And
it's
a 5 on the skull dice. So, the ogres are going to be going first. So we'll get back to you very shortly to find out exactly how that went for them. So, ogre turn 1. Not hugely eventful, as you can imagine, because they're just closing the distance as they move across the table. Down here, quite a lot of movement from the Mournfang as they close in on the Duardin lines over here. There have been some casualties though, because all the way down on this side, the Thunder Tusk and its ability, which goes by the name of
Blasts of frost-wreathed ice.
Yes, those blasts found their way into the Iron Breakers and took out 6 because it hasn't been damaged yet, so that's just immediately 6 mortal wounds on anything within range until you wound it. So that thing is an absolute beast. Had he targeted Belagar, of course, it would have halved the wounds and only done 3. So the Iron Breakers, not a bad target. It's lucky I brought 20 of them and not just 10, because they have been slightly diminished by that, and it could get even worse because I'm going to have to do their battle shock now. They've taken 6 casualties, they have bravery 7, so if I roll a 1, they won't take any more. If I roll above that, then they will. Here we go. Live battle shock. And it's a 1. They're made of stern stuff, these Iron Breakers, surrounded by Belagar on one side, big butt cheeks on the other side. Nothing to be worried about, lads. 6 horribly frozen casualties, it's not enough to worry the Duardin. Duardin turn 1. And as you can see down here, from this wonderful token, Belagar decided that he didn't fancy the Iron Breakers taking another battle shock test. They were resolute on the first one, but he wasn't too confident that they'd be able to pull that off again in the face of the Thunder Tusk. And because none of my units were able to get within range to actually damage the Thunder Tusk, then I thought I should probably put that on them right now to avoid any danger of that happening next turn as well. So, slight advance on this side. Mr. Big Boss, though, he's got right halfway across the table because he's so eager to get into combat with that Thunder Tusk that he got 6 for his run. So he's right up there. The Iron Drakes have advanced a little bit, which put them into range to fire the Trollhammer Torpedo, but only at this chap here, and it missed, sadly. The shooting over here didn't miss, though. As you can see, there have been some ogre casualties. First of all, the Hammerers moved up a bit, and behind them, the organ gun and the cannon opened fire. First of all, the cannon fired into the Mournfang and inflicted 9 wounds on them, with the engineer allowing rerolls to hit, of course. So they've only got 1 left, and it's on 3 wounds. So that was quite tremendous damage there. And then behind them, the lead belchers have also taken a casualty and another wound on the guy next to them. That's because the organ gun targeted them with 3 barrels and did quite tremendous damage. They did make a couple of saves, which stopped it being even worse. And we're going to have some live battle shock now. So first of all, let's have the Mournfang. They have a bravery of 6. Let's see if they can roll a 6 and lose another one. No, they don't. And the same goes for the lead belchers. On the roll of a 6, they would lose another model. No. Giving a quick overview now. You can see that the space between the 2 armies has shrunk drastically. Whoever goes first in turn 2 is probably going to be able to do some charging and inflict the first close combat casualties, most likely. So we're going to have a roll to see who's going first in the second battle round now. Here we go.
Remington! Shit.
It's a 2 for the Remington and a 4 for the orange. Okay, Duardin, turn 2. So first things first, in the hero phase, Belagar decided the Ironbreakers still don't want to be taking battle shock tests, possibly because the Ogres could get 2 turns in a row next if they're lucky, so they especially don't fancy it under those circumstances. They didn't move though, they're just sitting tight there, waiting for the Ogre advance, because they don't fancy being charged by all that stuff either. Mr. Big Butts, on the other hand, got right up there, moved forward as far as he could go, but then he failed his charge. So even though he's incredibly brave, he must have just tripped over a pebble or something. So he could not charge into that Thunder Tusk, which is what he wanted. The Iron Drakes moved up a bit, and were only able to get in range to fire a Trollhammer torpedo at the Thunder Tusk, which missed, so it's still on full health, so it could be dealing out 6 wounds, potentially 2 turns in a row. So that could be quite tremendous. It's very bad that I've failed to damage it, having 2 turns in a row here. Over on this side, it went a little better though, because, first of all, the Hammerers moved up, and they charged into the final Mournfang, and as you can see, they completely evaporated it, because they were ensorcelled from this piece of terrain here, which allowed them to re-roll wounds in combat, which helped, and it did actually inflict 1 mortal wound with its Iron Fist though, for making a save on a 6+, but it didn't make enough saves to prevent it being killed. Then the artillery did its magic again, with the engineer lending a hand. The cannon fired at the hunter, and he couldn't save, so it got 6 wounds on him. Rolling a 6, so he's down to 1. So he's just clinging on to life. And over here, the lead belchers took some more punishment from the organ gun. 15 shots on them. So one of them died, and one of them is down to 2 wounds. So quite tremendous damage there. And at the end of this turn, we've got some battle shock to do. The Hammerers don't need to take it for their casualty, because they're within range of a dispossessed hero, that being the engineer. But the lead belchers are going to need a battle shock test. They took 1 casualty, and they have a bravery of 6. So on the roll of a 6, the final one will run away. Anything else, and he's fine.
Oh.
It's a 3, so he's just clinging on. He's not too concerned yet, even though both of his buddies have been mercilessly gunned down and he's probably had one of his arms blown off. Halfway through Ogre turn 2, we're just about to head into the combat phase, but before that, let's see what else is going on. So, the Thunder Tusk, realising how amazingly potent its breath is, has just moved back a little bit, and then unleashed into the Iron Breakers again. So on a 2+, 6 of them frozen to death. Again. So there's only 8 left. Oh dear. So it's lucky they don't have to take battle shock tests. You can see that these ogres here have charged into Mr. Big Butts successfully. So that's going to be an interesting duel. And over on this side, lots of shooting attacks went into the Hammerers, and they've lost 5 as a result. Lots of D3 wound shooting attacks from the ogres. The Hunter had several different weapons to shoot with. The Lead Belcher and the Man-Eaters as well, with their pistols, all fired into the Hammerers, resulting in those casualties. But they're not going to be taking battle shock because they're within range of the engineer right now. But just to compound their misery, they were charged by the Saber Tusks. So we've got 2 combats coming up. Okay, so the combat phase in the Ogre turn, quite bloody. So the first thing to activate, the Saber Tusks decided they were going to go first against the Hammerers, and they killed one. At which point Alric Big Butts decided that he had to strike now, before he was killed most likely, and he actually took 2 wounds off the Ogres with his flailing axes. Then when they hit him back, as you can see, they just chopped his head off. But like a headless chicken, he continued fighting for a second, and with his epic death blow, he did a further couple of wounds onto that unit, which actually finished off one of the Ogres, and wounded this guy as well, as you can see there. And then over here, the Hammerers, when they struck back at the Saber Tusks, absolutely annihilated them. So only 3 Hammerers left, but they have taken out the Saber Tusks. So, the only unit that requires Battle Shock, because the Hammerers did take casualties, but they're within range of the Engineer still, and the Ironbreakers took casualties earlier, but they don't need to take it because of the command ability. So, it's just this unit of Ogres that are going to need a Battle Shock test.
But our command ability made it so they don't have to take battle shot tests this turn.
Yes, that is correct. And nobody else took any casualties, or if they did, they'd been completely wiped out. So, no Battle Shock required. So we're going to go straight to the roll-off for the 3rd battle round to see who's going to go first. This could be quite important here. Right in the middle.
Remington!
It's going to be the Ogres. That could be big, because that means they've still got the undamaged Thunder Tusk, who's just going to be firing out 6 mortal wounds on a 2+ again for the 3rd turn in a row. So, it could be quite tremendous damage there. Ogre turn 3. And, as predicted, the Thunder Tusk, realising he doesn't actually need to be in combat to deal out tremendous damage, decided, you know what, those Ironbreakers don't look chilly enough. So he throws another 6 of them on a 2+, so they're dead as well. Brag the Gutsman charged into Belagar Ironhammer, and these chaps went into the remaining Ironbreakers, only 2. You can see that the Yetis moved forward a bit as well to get out of that deadly piece of terrain, but they failed their charge, so they couldn't attack anybody. Over on this side, you can see that the 3 remaining Hammerers were killed. They were killed by a single pistol shot from them, and this chap decided to launch his javelin, or he was hoping to actually, but he was just out of range because he ran away. So he built up momentum to throw his javelin by running backwards, and then was out of range of the Iron Drakes to throw it, because the Hammerers were already dead, and they were his original choice as a target. So, we're going to go into the combat phase now, and we'll get back to you very shortly with the result of these 2 beastly encounters going on here. Well, the result of the combat phase. First of all, Brag the Gutsman decided he was going to strike first, and actually put 6 wounds onto Belagar, but because Belagar halves incoming wounds, he only took 3, so he's down to 2. The Ironbreakers then struck fruitlessly against the Ogres, didn't do any damage at all, and they didn't receive any damage in return either, because they made their armour save. And then, as you may have noticed, when Belagar struck back, well, first of all, he did about 4 wounds with his first round of attacks, because each one, of course, does D3 damage, and because Mr. Gutsman was almost dead, Belagar decided, hey, you know what, I feel like doing my once per game attack twice ability, so he went again and finished him off. So the Ogres are now without their general, which means no more command abilities, which is quite tasty. And we're going to be heading into the Duardin turn 3 now. Well, Duardin turn 3. Down here, Belagar Ironhammer charged into these Ogres to join the Ironbreakers in the fight, but we'll get to that shortly. He also used his command ability to put +1 attack in melee against this unit as well. Over here, the Iron Drakes came down from their piece of terrain because they needed to get in range to do some shooting. The Trollhammer Torpedo missed again, and the rest of them fired at the Yetis and killed one of them, and one of them is damaged as well, so they're not looking too healthy right now. Also in the shooting phase, over here, this little artillery battery took aim at the man-eaters at the back. The cannon hit with one of its shells and inflicted 5 wounds with it, and then the organ gun unleashed 4 barrels successfully into that unit as well, so there's only one of them left on a single wound, but they are immune to battle shock. And when it came to close combat over here, this 2-on-1 assault, Belagar went up first and did some reasonable damage to that unit, but he couldn't actually kill a model down to his last wound, so then they were able to strike and kill off both Ironbreakers with relative ease. So that 20 strong unit of Ironbreakers managed to inflict nothing throughout the game, although they did soak up some damage that something else could have been taking. And the only battle shock required for this turn will be on the Yetis, who took a single casualty. And what is their bravery?
6.
A 6. So on the roll of a 6, they'll lose one more model.
Nope.
Nope, so they are fine. Now we're going to have the roll off for the start of the 4th battle round right here. So here we go. This could be quite big. Oh, it's a 6 for the Duardin.
Remington!
And it's a 5, so the Duardin going first in the 4th battle round. That could be crucial. Duardin, turn 4. Not too complicated, but a lot was accomplished. So, let's start with this side of the table, where it all went very nicely for the Duardin forces. The artillery battery, as you can see, they're still just sitting there peacefully. And they managed to gun down all these units. The cannon, which has 2 shots of course, fired 1 at the lead belcher and 1 at the hunter. And then the organ gun pulverised the final manhunter. So there are no ogres left at all on this side of the table. The miners, you'll notice, didn't come in again, because they're still holding off. On this side, the iron drakes, the Trollhammer torpedo tried to fire at the Thunder Tusk to stop its reign of terror, but missed again, as it always does. The rest of the iron drakes fired into these ogres here and killed one of them, finished him off by putting 1 more wound on him, hopefully clearing the way for Belegar to annihilate them. So then in the combat phase, when Belegar piled in, unfortunately, he did not inflict any wounds at all. He failed with all of his wound rolls. All 4 of them that hit all failed. I think just nothing but 1s and 2s. So then the ogre hit him back, and he failed a save, took 3 wounds, halved, rounding up, was enough to take away the 2 he had left. So Belegar is dead. So the ogres certainly have this side of the table under control. The Duardin certainly have that side under control. The miners are still yet to come in. Ogre turn 4. So with their penultimate turn, the Thunder Tusk has just dipped its toe into this central area, claiming it with its 12 wounds. So it's going to be very difficult for me to take that area. Then it unleashed its frosty breath on the Iron Drakes. Didn't roll a 1 again. So I've paid the ultimate price for failing to wound the Thunder Tusk so far in the game, because 6 of them were just frozen to death. That's quite a lot of casualties it's inflicted now. And then this ogre charged into them, but couldn't finish them off. And the Yetis is just kind of chilling out here, because they don't want to get too far away from any of these Yorgold regions with only 1 turn left for them to go and claim it. So we've got some battle shock for the Iron Drakes. So if I get a 1, none of them will run away. Anything else, and they will start taking casualties. It's a 5, so they're all dead. Every single one of them runs away in terror. So let's roll to see who's going to go first in the 5th battle round. Here we go. It's a 3.
Remington!
And it's a 6, so the ogres are going to be going first in this turn. The most eventful of ogre turn 5s. So the Yetis moved into this area here to claim this Yorgold region. And in the centre, the Thunder Tusk was weighing up whether to run back to that one or stay here. And he decided because the miners are coming in, he can't afford for them to just drop down here and get 2 points. So he's going to have to stay and contest it. So at the moment, there is him there, controlling the middle, along with his buddy there, who has quite a few wounds as well. So in total, that's about 17 wounds there in the middle, isn't it? Controlling it. So 10 miners dropping in there wouldn't be enough to own it. And the Yetis have got that one, of course. So no fighting at all during this ogre turn, and it's only the Duardin turn 5 to go. At the moment, I just have this one. So presumably my war machine's going to have to move, maybe do some shooting, maybe not, we'll see, and the miners coming in. Where are they going to pop up? Because that's going to be quite an interesting conundrum. Are they going to try and contest the middle? Are they confident that some of these guys could get there with some strategic running? Probably not. The Duardin turn 5, and we're part way through, but you'll see why I've come in at this point. So first of all, this ogre was killed by the cannon, which was able to move just enough to get into range. So he's dead. I couldn't get any of my war machines or the engineer into the middle to help contest that area against the Thunder Tusk, and I couldn't shoot it because I can't get close enough. So all I can do now is try to get a draw, because he's got the centre after the Iron Drakes died. The Yetis are claiming this area right now, so the miners have come on 9 inches away from them. all I can do is charge the Yetis and hope that at the end of the combat I have more wounds left in this area than they do. So if I fail the charge, I've lost by 3 points to 1. This is the final turn, so if I fail this, this will be the final action, because there won't be any combat. So, I need 9 or more. Any other move and it would have just been an instant loss already. So this is the only logical thing to do. I'm going to roll it in the middle. 9 or more to get into combat, and even then it's still not certain, but this is just to continue the game. It's a 7, so they don't make it. So the Yetis are able to sit on the Your Gold successfully and claim that area. The Thunder Tusk is able to dip its toe into the centre and claim the 2 juicy points on offer here, and the Organ Gun is able to claim this one. So it's going to be an Ogre victory, even though they've only got 3 models left alive. And really, I think my lack of ability to wound the Thunder Tusk with anything, because I didn't really have things within range to deal with it, was the decisive factor in this game, because that 6 instant mortal wounds he was able to dish out constantly because I couldn't weaken him was critical, wasn't it? What do you think of that, Mr. Remington?
Who'd ever thought that 2 Yetis could have made Warhammer history and actually won a game? Never before has this been done.
Yeah, if those Yetis had died, then I could have just brought the miners down anywhere and claimed one of the Your Gold areas and made it a draw.
I'm just going to photograph this sweet moment. Who said Yetis were rubbish?
Quite a few people have said that over the years. So, what do you think of this bad boy?
Love him. I was really 50-50 on the last moment whether to actually field this guy, because we had 15 points to spend and this guy's worth 3.5 points. So it's, it's a fifth of the army, but I'm really glad I used him. And I deliberately kept him out of the range because I know that with monsters, you got to keep them away from all shooting. And it's lucky I did. Andy's conundrum was whether to keep the war machines together, so they're like a laser-guided battery with the engineer there, or to split them up and spread the wounds out. So I think perhaps you should have brought the miners on a bit earlier. But yeah, it's a bloodbath, to be fair, wasn't it?
It certainly was. There's barely anything left alive. I think possibly something I could have done is in turn 4, when I was firing with these war machines, I could have moved them up 4 inches and still fired and got them closer to this central zone, so that then I could have moved and then maybe run them, including the engineer, who has 5 wounds on his own, into this central zone, so that when I brought the miners down as well, I would have had potentially quite a lot of wounds in this area to at least compete with the total laid down by the Thunder Tusk, which could have been enough.
I think looking at the ogre's options, what could I have used to defeat those war machines? Well, I might have been able to bring a Gorger. That is something that can appear on the table. So perhaps that is the only thing I can think of, because you don't have any flyers in the army to actually deal with them without getting shot off the table before they get there. Most of my fast troops, the Mornfang Cavalry and the Saber Tusks, were on this side of the table simply so they could take those guys out, but they didn't get close at all. So I decided to hang back, but I was still in range because his cannon's got 32 inches. The Gnoblars get to survive another day, because I think they would have just been... Well, I don't think they're going to survive the day at all, actually, because the dwarves are about to turn their cannons round and just annihilate them guys.
Yeah, I think the final act of the battle would definitely be the dwarves turning around and just obliterating the Gnoblars for causing this whole mess in the first place. And definitely the one lesson I've taken from this is when faced with a Thunder Tusk, you need something opposite it that can just deal instant damage, because you can't even let it have 1 or 2 turns to use that 2+ ridiculous ability. You need to put damage on it as early as possible. And the only thing that I ever got in range to shoot at it was the Trollhammer Torpedo, which notoriously misses every time it fires. So you need something opposite that that's going to be able to wound it immediately. So for other armies that would be a wizard perhaps, or a war machine, some kind of shooting, because that ability is tremendous, dare I say. The problem is putting a war machine opposite it. If it gets to within range to shoot the war machine with its breath first, that would just annihilate a war machine in one go. So it's quite a conundrum. That is a very, very powerful unit indeed.
I think because I got the first 2 turns as well, it meant I could control the distance. And if you'd have got 2 turns in a row, then you could have probably got things in range. Did Big Butts fail a charge against it?
He did. And then he was eaten by some ogres.
Yeah, now the Iron Guts, so good. They're dealing out 3 damage every time they get a wound through. So they are a phenomenal unit. I don't know if I'd take the Hunter again. He's more of a comedy character, really. And I don't know if I'd take the Mornfang again. I think maybe probably need 2 units of 2 or 1 unit of 4 to make them effective. I think also if I'd have taken a Tyrant, that could have been interesting. Or just bog standard Ogres. I did like the Man-Eaters, but didn't really get to see the best of them because they got cannoned off. I would have liked to see the Yetis get in combat, but they had a mission to fulfill, taking a table quarter. But definitely the man of the match for my team has got to be the Thunder Tusk over here. With its Frost Wreath Ice Blast, its Chain Trap, and its Hunter Crossbow. What about for you, Andy? Who are your star players?
I think for me it's definitely the Engineer and the boost that he gave to these 2 war machines, because they absolutely obliterated everything on this half of the table. I think as far as mistakes I made, I think the army selection within the points limit was quite strong. The deployment of the Iron Drakes in the middle here was probably a mistake, because they were never really in position to deal out serious punishment. I can't think of a time I got them in range to fire twice.
You could have maybe ran them for a turn. Sacrifice shooting, maybe.
Maybe. I think I was wary of getting them too close to this guy, though. And ultimately he did end up freezing 6 of them to death. So I think I should have committed them to one flank rather than thinking about keeping them on this terrain. Possibly over on this side, and then advance everything up, and then being able to actually win a shootout against that thing, instead of just being frozen to death by it.
What about using a gyrocopter?
Gyrocopter would have been very handy as well. Something to just nip into range, do a bit of damage on him, potentially, and then at least stop him doing 6 instant damage. Even reducing it from 6 to D6 is huge.
I think what I've learned, when it comes to Hammerers, Ironbreakers and Belagar, shoot them off. Don't get into combat with them if you can help it, unless you've got Iron Guts there.
Anything that dishes out mortal wounds is just the ultimate killing machine, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the playoff between Brag the Gutsman and Belagar, because I thought I'd have that in the bag, because he is a hero. His hero speciality is killing other heroes, but I failed to remember Belagar gets to roll another set of attacks once per game, and that was a fatal mistake by Brag.
It was.
But yeah, all in all, a really enjoyable battle. It did. 1 minute I thought it was going to be an easy win for me, and then the moment Andy had 2 turns in a row, suddenly the pendulum swung.
I was hoping to just annihilate everything on this side and then end up claiming lots of this territory. But unfortunately, because this side crumbled so heavily, then the Thunder Tusk was able to just worry about actually claiming a zone rather than fighting in the end. And with its 12 wounds, I was never going to be able to compete with that. So, all in all, a very good game. It was a quick game. It flowed quite fast. And there wasn't a huge amount of units, and a lot of stuff died quite rapidly. So it almost flew by, didn't it? So, ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion the Ogres are going to be heading back to the surface, heading back to their home with substantial piles of your gold, and I'm sure the Duardin are going to have to go on an expedition at some point to retrieve it. And we'll see exactly what happens with that in the future, but they're not going to take this lying down, are they? Special thanks to all of our patrons for making this all possible, and we'll catch you next time. Ta-ta!
I knew Brag would be stupid enough to charge into their boss. But look at us, lads. It's just me and my beast and my best buddy. And we're claiming all the gold.
Oh no! Well, lads, plenty of killing, but I'm afraid we've lost. We're going to have to head back to the hold and tell everyone that we failed to secure the Your Gold. Oh no, we're going to be on half rations for a week.
The Thunder Tusk is on the prowl. The Thunder Tusk is loose. The Thunder Tusk is on the prowl, giving Duardin abuse, making the most of your gold. The Thunder Tusk is loose. Sacrifice Bragg the Gutsman, but the Thunder Tusk is loose. The Thunder Tusk is loose. The Thunder Tusk is loose. This is Bragg the Gutsman, wielder of the great Gouger. Is that how you say it? The great gut gouger, even.